All right, guys, here we go. We're going to take a ride on the train to Living History Days.
Bye, Dave.
Good to see you. Hey friends, great to be with you again. We've got a really neat thing that we're going to get to learn about here today. This is called a sawmill. Now, you may not know much about sawmills. I don't know very much about sawmills, so hopefully you and I can learn something together today. If you look over here, this looks to me like a tree, like a log that's laying on its side. And when I need a board, if I'm trying to build something, or if I need some 2x4s or a post, I usually just go to the store and buy those, and maybe that's what you do too if you're working on a project with your parents or something. But it hasn't always been that way, has it?
It has not, no.
So how do we go? These are my friends, by the way. This is Owen and this is Guy. And they know how to run this sawmill, and they're going to show us how it is that we get from a tree to a board. So how does that happen?
Well, we run it through the saw. And you see our saw, it's got big teeth.
So this great big blade, is it going to go round and round?
It's going to go this way.
Okay.
So this is the sharp edge of the teeth.
Okay, I can feel that. That is really sharp. If you could touch this, it wouldn't quite cut you, but close. And if it was moving, it probably would really be bad.
It would have no hand or arm or whatever.
We can see that this will turn. So I have like a handsaw that has a little blade that goes around. This is kind of a great big version of that?
It's a great big version of the same thing. Yes.
How do you get these teeth sharp, or if one breaks or something, what do you do about that?
Well, we have a tool here. And this tool goes on here, like so. Like so. And then it rolls this piece out. And then that frees that tooth up.
Okay.
Here's a brand new tooth.
So if you guys can see this, those are just like the teeth that are up on the saw there, and that's what cuts through the wood, and it's kind of sharp. And then so that piece puts these in. So this piece really never changes. All you have to change are the teeth.
Yeah, just the teeth. The keepers stay there, but just a new tooth.
Okay. So then what's this red lever here for?
This runs the carriage back and forth. This will pull the log into the saw. You see this where the log's setting? That's a carriage.
Okay.
And it'll pull the log into the saw.
And there's rails here almost like a train track.
Right.
So this whole thing will move, and that's how the log gets over here?
That's right.
That's really... Would you guys mind to fire it up and show me how it works?
Sure we can.
Let's let these guys see how to cut a log. sawmill, and my friend Owen just showed us how this runs in and out, and takes a round tree, but we can see now it's making a square log or square lumber, isn't it?
Right. Yep.
Now, I noticed when you were running it, we used this thing that you said was what made the carriage go in and out.
Correct.
Which is kind of like a train, and we got to see that. That was really cool. But what was I saw you pulling this lever in between each time. What's that for?
Well, if you notice, we're right at that mark. When we pull the lever, it'll move it up. It also moves this out.
Okay. So the numbers on there are telling you how, is it telling you how much it's going to move this?
Yes.
And then
on the top, you see 1 1/4, which is lumber people call it 5/4.
okay.
And that's what we're sawing is 5/4. The next scale is 1 inch. So, and then the left scale is just plain inches.
So when that went from 3 to 4, that means it's going to make a 1-inch board.
Yes.
So that pulls the log out this way, which
Yes.
means that the blade is going to come through.
Somewhere out in here.
Okay. That's really neat. Now I noticed a couple of other things. What's this here for?
They call it a dog. I don't know why they call it that, but that's what it's called.
I
But
have
that,
a dog at home, but it doesn't look like
it doesn't
that.
look like that. But it holds the cant, so when you saw it, it won't move around.
Now what's the cant?
The cant is what we started with. The square log, well, of course we had one side that had bark on it, but it's still called a cant, C-A-N-T,
Okay.
and that's what lumber people call.
And so when you
And-
very first begin with a log, it's a whole round log on here.
Yes, that's correct.
And you square a side, then what
Mhm.
happens?
Then you'll roll it over, square the next side, and keep going until you get it squared.
Okay.
That's normally what you do. Sometimes you might take off a slab, and then you'll have to trim it when you're all done, because there'll be a bark side on both sides that way. So you'll have to trim
Now
both sides.
is the bark side any good for lumber?
No, not particularly.
Why is that? Do you know?
Well, you can't nail bark.
Okay. And I guess it wouldn't be square to build with, would it?
No,
It'd be round and kind of hard to handle. Now behind us, I noticed a couple of other things. There's a kind of a platform here. What's that for?
Well, that's where we keep our logs when our supply of logs. We put the logs on there and then roll them onto the carriage.
Okay.
When we get this one finished, we roll another one on and keep going.
And then the other thing I noticed back there, that big yellow thing, is that the engine that runs it?
Yes, we're a little overpowered, but the engine was donated to us, and so we're just making use of it.
Okay. That's kind of like an engine that would be in a bulldozer or something like
Yeah.
that, isn't it?
It actually came out of a crane at Harrison Steel's, what I understand.
Okay, okay.
Russell Waymar donated to the club.
Well, this is very neat. Thank you for showing me the sawmill. Hey, this is so neat. I love getting to watch that log come down through the saw blade, and on this end, we get to see the boards. And my friend Guy here, he knows a lot about lumber. He actually does construction. So I want to kind of ask you some questions.
Okay.
Now, I noticed this kind of looks like a board, but this looks like the bark. Is that what that is?
Yes, that's the edge of the tree that started out down at the other end of the sawmill. That's called live edge. Live edge used to be they didn't use it much. They'd cut that off. If you remember, Owen mentioned having to resaw the board after you square it up. Sometimes you have this on, you'll run it back through the saw blade and cut it off and square this side of the board up, throwing this away. Years ago they didn't actually throw it away, they used it for fuel to power the sawmill when it was ran by steam. But today people are excited about having live edge. They use it to make tables and shelving, and it's actually just what I said, live edge board.
It kind of almost makes it feel like you're bringing a tree right into your house,
Right into
doesn't
your
it?
home, yes.
So as we look at this, I noticed a couple other things about it. Like here's one that doesn't have the live edge. So it's got a nice square edge on it, and we could make a lot of things out of this, couldn't we?
You could. This is what's called rough sawn lumber. This is, like you just said, has the saw marks in it. If you'll see these little lines.
That's what those little streaks are?
Yes.
That's
and
from the
those,
saw blade?
that's from the teeth in the saw blade.
Okay.
This is okay if you're building a barn. You could use rough sawn lumber. But for furniture, you wouldn't want to use it.
I think if I was going to sit on that, I might get splinters in my backside.
That would be painful.
Yeah. So how do you get rid of that and make it smooth?
Well, there's different methods, but the most common is use what's called a planer, and you run this board through another big tool, and it has flat blades on it, and they will come in and just shave off the top of the board and make it very smooth. Then after that, you sand it, like say if you're going to make a tabletop, so you would sand it. But even before you can start with any of that, this board has to dry. This wood is called green. It's still got the moisture in it, and so you would want to dry it. There's two methods of drying. Today you can use air, where you stack it and you put sticks between it and you make a big stack of these boards. You leave it for a year. It takes per inch of thickness of board about a year to dry. So that's a slow process, but it's adequate and does the job. Another method they've developed is a kiln. You put the board in like a big oven.
And warm it up?
And warm it up.
How do you not light it on fire?
You don't put the fire under the board. You put the fire in another room and pipe the air, hot air in and blow it around the boards, and it sucks the moisture out, and that's called kiln dried wood.
So if we had gone and cut this tree down yesterday and ran it through the sawmill today, I've still got to wait a year to be able to use this.
If you're air drying. If you're kiln drying, it can be done in about 3 weeks.
Okay, so it's not a very fast process, is it?
No, it takes time. You know, it took a long time for the tree to grow, but then it also takes time to get to use it.
Now let's talk about what kind of tree this is, because I believe it's an ash tree. Is that right?
Yes, this is what we had here available was an ash tree, and it's a nice hardwood used for making furniture. Makes a real pretty furniture piece. There's other kinds of woods out there. You have oak, and several different species of oak. Red oak and white oak are the most common for furniture. You also have walnut. Walnut is a dark wood. If you've been around out in your yard, some people have walnut trees in their yard.
The little
big
green,
the big green ball out
Yeah.
there. Squirrels love them, and so that makes it's a dark board wood.
Don't they use ash wood for baseball bats?
Yes, they do.
Is that one of the things?
Yes, they do.
Now
Hickory is another one they use.
I heard one of our local conservation officers talking about the ash trees and that a lot of them are dying. Why are they dying?
There is a little critter called the ash borer beetle, and he comes in and he eats this tree up. He actually bores into it, and it will kill the tree.
So we didn't necessarily have to kill a tree to cut this. We just cut up a tree that had already died from the ash borer, huh? So when we go to the store and pick up a board, there's a lot of things that have happened to get us to that place. And especially if you go to the store and buy a piece of furniture, there was a whole lot of work.
A whole lot of process
went into
in
that, huh?
Yes.
So even when you go home tonight, as you go through your house, maybe think about the guy who nailed those boards together to build that house. It may have been a guy, just like Guy. But also look around your house at your furniture and stuff and think about how all that wood at one point was just a tree out in a forest.
That's right.
And some people ran it through a sawmill to make it into the things we use today.
Yes, they did. And some of the byproduct from sawmill is sawdust, and they use sawdust for several processes. Today they take a lot of it and press it together and glue it, and they make other boards, and it's called particle board. And then they also have chips, and it's called OSB. That's what they use on roofing and on top of houses. Another product they use sawdust for is they bag up pine and sell it for horse barn. We'll buy it for livestock bedding and little animals, your little hamster.
I use that sawdust underneath my horse Roo and my goats that we weighed the other day.
Yes. There
Oh
you
yeah,
go.
very
So
good.
There's they try not to waste wood, all the product from trees. They use limbs and things like say and chop it up, chip it up, and make other product with it. So they try to be very economical with our trees.
Good to use all of it that we can.
Yes.
Well, thank you.
Oh, thank you.
Well, we've been learning about the sawmill. You guys have taught us so much, and we've turned a tree into a board, which is kind of neat. But I got to thinking, I have one question for you guys. Before we had a sawmill and an engine and all this kind of stuff, how did we make lumber before we had machines?
Well, back before power machines came to play, they would do it by hand. They had what was called a whip saw, which was a long straight blade with two handles on it and a man on each end, and they would have to pull back and forth and cut that log. It took a lot of time and a lot of effort. Men were big back then. They were strong. Not like us. Anyway, then that was probably, if I remember right, in around the 3rd century was the first sawmill, and that was done with water and stone blades back in the 3rd century. That's
So
a long time
That'd
ago.
be like 1,700 years ago.
A long time ago.
So a lot of the things we've been learning about through history days are things that have just been invented in the last 100 to 200 years.
Yes.
But you're saying a sawmill's been around a lot longer than
A lot
that.
longer. Now the first sawmills of America came to be when they colonized Virginia back in the 18th century or so. And so they started coming to America when America was founded, and then they brought in the sawmill. Villages all had sawmills in them. If you had a sawmill, you became a town because you had a way of making wood to build buildings to build your town.
It kind of was the start of everything, wasn't it?
It was the beginning of everything.
You could build a log cabin, like there's a cabin that we've gotten to see. You could do that with hand tools, right?
Yes, they used axes, and what's called a hand-hewn beam is actually taking an axe with a flat blade called, and it would broad axe, I believe, and you would chip by hand again, chip the wood away, the bark, and get it square up the log that way.
So a lot like our other machines, this all of a sudden the sawmill made it able to make a lot of lumber really fast, which lets you build a lot of buildings really fast.
Yes.
Very good. Well, thank you guys for taking time to talk with us today, and we sure enjoyed the sawmill. Maybe we can go build something with our new piece of wood that we got.
In a year.
In a year. Today at Living History Days. I'm so glad you came on this trip with us. I hope you learned some things today. I hope it was a lot of fun. I hope you'll come back and see us again sometime. And maybe someday you could come out here in person and get to ride the train and see some of the very neat things we've gotten to share with you. Hope you have a great day. We'll see you.